Michael Thompson appeared to be the quintessential family man, a figure of reliability and warmth in both his household and the community. At 45, he was the proud father of 2 children, Emma and Jake, and a devoted husband to Sarah. His life seemed perfectly curated, marked by weekend barbecues, family game nights, and active participation in local charity events. Friends described Michael as generous and approachable, always willing to lend a hand or provide support to those in need. His laughter resonated through the walls of their cozy home, creating an atmosphere that invited love and comfort. Each morning began with the same routine. He would rise early, brew a pot of coffee strong enough to kickstart his day, and prepare breakfast for his family. Sarah often marveled at how he managed to juggle work and family life with such grace. "You're like a superhero," she would tease him, her eyes sparkling with admiration. Michael would chuckle in response, brushing off her compliment while feeling a swell of pride. Little did she know that beneath his charming exterior lay a labyrinth of secrets that threatened to unravel everything he held dear. Although Michael was cherished for his affable nature, there existed an undeniable tension underneath the surface, an invisible thread binding him to a secret that was growing heavier with each passing day. This secret was not something that could be easily dismissed or concealed. It was a weight that pressed down on him even in moments of joy. As he watched his children play in the backyard or shared tender moments with Sarah over candlelit dinners, the nagging thought of what he was hiding gnawed at him. His days were filled with the mundane activities of life, but they also included shadowy dealings that took place in dimly lit offices and backroom negotiations far removed from his suburban paradise. Michael had built a lucrative career through questionable means, business ventures teetering on the edge of legality that provided him with financial security but also placed him on dangerous ground. While he presented himself as an upstanding citizen during neighborhood gatherings, behind closed doors, he navigated a world fraught with risk and moral ambiguity. Every time he stepped out into the world as Michael Thompson, the dependable husband and father, he felt like an imposter donning a mask that barely fit. The charming smile he wore was merely a facade designed to shield his family from the truth that their idyllic life was built on lies. With each interaction at work, each friendly conversation at school functions, the secret loomed larger in his mind like an ominous storm cloud. Despite this internal struggle, Michael excelled at maintaining appearances. He perfected the art of compartmentalization, keeping his 2 lives separate so they would never collide. He invested time in honing his charm, ensuring that anyone who crossed paths with him left feeling uplifted and valued. Yet, this very skill became both his greatest asset and his most significant burden. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, Michael found solace in fleeting moments when he could forget about the secret weighing heavily on him. But those moments were increasingly rare. The walls began to close in as whispers of discontent emerged from within his family. Sarah noticed changes in him, his distracted gaze during conversations and the way he sometimes flinched at unexpected questions about their future or finances. "Are you okay?" she would ask softly, concern etched across her face. Michael would smile reassuringly but felt a pang of guilt with each reassuring nod. He knew he was not okay. He was trapped in an intricate web of deception that would only grow more complicated with time. His children adored him. Emma looked up to her father as her hero, while Jake sought his approval in every little achievement, from school projects to sports games. The love they showered upon him intertwined with the anxiety that came from knowing how easily everything could shatter if they discovered the truth about him. As Michael navigated these complexities of love and deceit, it became increasingly clear that maintaining his facade required more effort than he had ever imagined. Each interaction felt like walking a tightrope suspended above an abyss. One misstep could lead to disaster. And yet, despite all the risks involved, he continued to cling to this illusion, the hope that somehow it would all work out without any fallout. But deep down inside, a storm was brewing, one that would soon challenge not only Michael's carefully crafted life but also everything he held dear. As the days passed, the weight of Michael's secret began to suffocate him. The duality of his existence, a respected family man by day and a morally ambiguous businessman by night, created a chasm within him that felt increasingly impossible to bridge. On one side lay the warmth of his family, filled with laughter and love, while on the other was a world of shadows and ethical compromise that he desperately tried to keep at bay. Michael's business dealings had started innocently enough. What began as a small venture into real estate quickly spiraled into a network of questionable partnerships and shady contracts that lined his pockets but also clouded his conscience. He had initially justified his choices with the thought that he was providing for his family, delivering them a life of comfort and security. Yet, as he delved deeper into this underbelly of commerce, he found himself entangled in a web that blurred the lines between right and wrong. The more successful he became, the more isolated he felt. Michael found himself attending clandestine meetings in darkened rooms, shaking hands with individuals whose reputations were built on intimidation rather than integrity. His phone buzzed incessantly with messages from associates demanding quick decisions and shady transactions that required him to tread carefully. Each time he closed a deal, a small part of him celebrated the financial gain while another part recoiled at what he had sacrificed to achieve it. At home, however, everything appeared normal. Family dinners were filled with discussions about school projects and weekend plans. Sarah remained blissfully unaware of her husband's internal turmoil, often complimenting him on his hard work and dedication. "I'm so proud of you," she would say, her eyes shining with admiration. Each praise felt like both a balm and a blade to Michael's heart. How could he live with himself knowing that every compliment was built on a foundation of lies? Amidst the laughter and comfort of family life, Michael experienced moments of clarity that pierced through the fog of denial. One particularly poignant evening, as he watched Emma play piano while Jake animatedly shared stories from school, he felt an overwhelming wave of emotion wash over him. What if they knew? He thought, imagining their faces twisted in confusion and hurt upon discovering the truth about their father. The fleeting joy was swiftly replaced by dread as visions of their disappointment clouded his mind. Conversations around the dinner table grew increasingly strained as Michael wrestled with his guilt. He often caught himself zoning out when Sarah asked about his day or questioned his late nights at the office. "Just another busy week," he would reply, forcing a smile while feeling an insatiable urge to confess everything, a desire that quickly morphed into fear of losing everything he cherished. In secret moments alone in his car or during late-night drives after meetings, Michael would replay scenarios in his head where he came clean to Sarah, how she would react, what she might say. But each time he envisioned that moment of vulnerability, doubt crept back in. What good would it do? Would it protect them or destroy their lives? The conflict reached a boiling point during one fateful night when an unexpected knock rattled him awake from restless sleep. He opened the door to find a former associate standing there, someone who knew far too much about Michael's dealings and had come seeking help for their own desperate situation. Their conversation turned tense as they discussed debts owed and threats looming over their heads. The associate's desperation mirrored Michael's own fear. They both stood at the precipice looking down into chaos. "Do you want your family to be dragged into this?" the associate demanded, eyes wild with anxiety. "You're living in a dream world if you think you can keep them safe forever." Those words pierced through Michael like ice water splashing against his skin. It was a stark reminder that no matter how hard he tried to separate his two worlds, they were inevitably bound together by the choices he had made. The fear began to settle deeply in him like an ominous shadow, the realization that his secret could unravel not just his own life but also the lives of those he loved most. Each day that passed left him feeling more trapped than before, oscillating between two identities, one loved and respected within the walls of his home and another feared and loathed outside those walls. The internal conflict festered relentlessly within him. Should he continue to protect his family from the truth or risk everything for honesty? As whispers from both worlds beckoned for attention, Michael found himself standing at an impasse, one where every decision had significant consequences for both himself and those who depended on him. Caught in this tumultuous storm of conflicting loyalties, Michael knew one thing for certain: secrets have a way of surfacing, and when they do, they can change everything in an instant. Michael's family life was a tapestry of warmth and connection woven through shared experiences and love. At the center of this tapestry stood Sarah, his devoted wife, whose laughter filled their home with joy. Sarah had a remarkable ability to make even the simplest moments feel special. Whether it was a cozy movie night with popcorn or an impromptu dance party in the living room, she effortlessly brought everyone together. Michael often admired how she balanced her nurturing instincts with her fierce independence, qualities that made him fall in love with her all over again. Their children, Emma and Jake, mirrored their mother's vibrant spirit. Emma, at 12 years old, was blossoming into a creative soul, often found with paint-stained fingers and a sketchbook cradled in her arms. She possessed an uncanny ability to see beauty in the ordinary, turning mundane objects into artistic expressions. Jake, on the other hand, was an energetic 9-year-old bursting with curiosity. His boundless enthusiasm and knack for storytelling kept the family entertained as he regaled them with tales of imaginary adventures. As Michael observed his family's interactions from the sidelines, he felt a profound sense of pride mixed with an ever-increasing undercurrent of anxiety. The love they shared was palpable. However, beneath the surface lay Michael's monumental secret, a truth that threatened to unravel the very fabric of their lives. In moments of quiet reflection, Michael often thought about how deeply connected they all were. Family dinners were filled with laughter and stories exchanged around the table. They would share their triumphs and struggles. Emma would discuss her art projects while Jake animatedly recounted his day at school. Michael would listen intently, nodding along as he savored each moment. Yet amid these joyful exchanges, he felt like a ghost hovering at the edge of their lives, a man living in two worlds who struggled to fully engage in either. The tension began to manifest during seemingly innocuous moments. Sarah would occasionally ask him about his late nights at work or why he seemed distracted during family outings. "You seem so far away sometimes," she'd say with concern lacing her voice, her eyes searching his for answers. Each time she posed those questions, Michael felt a tightening grip around his heart. He wanted to share everything with her, the burden he carried, the choices he had made, but fear held him back like chains. Emma and Jake sensed something was amiss as well. They noticed their father's frequent absences and his distracted demeanor during their cherished family activities. On one occasion, while playing a board game together, Jake blurted out, "Dad, why do you always look like you're thinking about something else?" The innocent question struck Michael like a bolt of lightning. He forced a smile and ruffled Jake's hair but felt a pang of guilt pierce through him. How could he explain what was happening without shattering their world? As days turned into weeks, the cracks in Michael's carefully constructed facade began to widen. Family outings that had once been filled with laughter started to feel strained under the weight of unspoken words. During one particularly tense dinner, when Sarah innocently asked Michael about an upcoming business trip, he felt the air grow thick with discomfort. "Just some meetings," he replied tersely, not meeting her gaze as dread twisted in his stomach. Sarah's brow furrowed slightly at his abruptness, but she dismissed it for the moment. Perhaps it was just the stress from work. Yet deep down inside her heart, she couldn't shake off the feeling that something significant was being hidden from her. The strain intensified one evening during a rare family movie night when Michael's phone buzzed incessantly beside him. He glanced at it nervously. It was yet another message from an associate demanding immediate attention regarding a deal gone awry. As he fumbled to silence it, Emma caught sight of his worried expression and asked softly, "Dad, is everything okay?" Her innocent concern cut deeper than any accusation could have. Michael looked at Emma's wide eyes filled with trust and love, the very essence of innocence, and cringed internally at the thought of betraying that trust by revealing his secret life. In that moment, he realized how deeply intertwined his choices were with their happiness. Every decision he made carried weight not only for himself but for each member of his family. The underlying tension became palpable as Michael navigated this complex web of familial love interwoven with deceit. He knew that every moment spent in their company came with an emotional cost, a reminder of what could be lost if his secret were ever revealed. The bond they shared was both a source of strength and vulnerability. It anchored him while simultaneously threatening to pull him under. As he watched Sarah tenderly tuck Emma into bed each night while Jake drifted off to sleep with dreams of adventure on his lips, Michael felt waves of longing wash over him, longing for simplicity and honesty amidst chaos. But as long as he remained ensnared in his double life, those cherished moments felt tainted by shadows lurking just beyond their reach. Ultimately, Michael faced an agonizing reality. The deeper he sank into deceit, the more elusive genuine connection became within his own family. A truth that loomed larger each day as he pondered how much longer he could maintain this precarious balance without catastrophic consequences. The tension in Michael's life reached a breaking point one fateful afternoon when he received an unexpected phone call that sent chills down his spine. It was an associate from his business dealings, a man named Victor who had always operated on the fringe of legality but had recently begun dabbling in more dangerous waters. As Michael answered, he immediately sensed something was off. Victor's voice was laced with urgency and fear. "Michael, we need to talk now," Victor said, his tone grave. "It's about the shipment. There's been a problem." Michael's heart raced as he tried to process the implications of Victor's words. The shipment they were discussing involved a risky investment, one that had the potential for substantial profits but also came with significant legal ramifications. "What kind of problem?" Michael asked, forcing himself to remain calm despite the rising tide of anxiety within him. "Customs is involved. They've flagged us and they're looking for answers," Victor replied, panic seeping into his voice. "I need you to come down to the warehouse right away." The mention of law enforcement sent a jolt of electricity through Michael's body. The stakes had suddenly escalated beyond anything he had anticipated. He had always been careful, ensuring that every move he made was calculated and discreet, but this felt like an impending disaster looming on the horizon. After hanging up, Michael felt a whirlwind of emotions swirling within him: fear, anger, and an overwhelming sense of dread. He glanced around his home, where laughter once echoed during family dinners, now feeling like a gilded cage that might soon crumble around him. He had built this life for his family on shaky ground, and now it threatened to collapse entirely. "I can't let this happen," he muttered under his breath, torn between maintaining his facade and confronting the reality of his choices. If word got out about his dealings, it wouldn't just ruin him, it would devastate Sarah and the kids who adored him without question. With a heavy heart, Michael made his way to the warehouse where Victor waited. As he drove through familiar streets, memories flooded back: family outings to nearby parks and impromptu ice cream runs with Jake and Emma. Each sight reminded him of what was at stake and how quickly everything could change. Upon arriving at the warehouse, Michael was met by a scene that set his nerves on edge. Victor paced anxiously near a stack of crates while several other associates looked equally tense. "You're late," Victor snapped as Michael approached. "We don't have much time." "What exactly happened?" Michael demanded, trying to maintain control over the situation despite the turmoil brewing inside him. Victor leaned closer, lowering his voice as if even the walls had ears. "The shipment was inspected last night, not just by customs but by local law enforcement too. They found some discrepancies in our paperwork and now there are questions being asked." Michael's stomach dropped at the realization that their carefully crafted deception was unraveling before their eyes. This wasn't just a minor hiccup, it was a full-blown crisis that could expose him and everything he had built over the years. "What do we do?" he asked urgently. "We need to figure out who tipped them off," Victor replied grimly. "And we need to get rid of any evidence before they connect us directly." The gravity of their situation washed over Michael like a wave crashing upon rocky shores. He understood that doing nothing was not an option, it would only invite disaster into his carefully curated life. But as he weighed his options, he felt an overwhelming sense of dread creeping in. What if this spiraled out of control? What if someone ended up behind bars? What if it led back to him? As they plotted their next steps in hushed tones amid the chaos of the warehouse, Michael felt himself standing at a crossroads, a decision point that would shape not only his future but also that of his family. If he chose to distance himself from Victor and these dealings, would it leave them vulnerable? Yet staying involved meant risking everything, the very existence of the life he cherished. Suddenly, the sound of sirens pierced through the air like an alarm bell ringing in his ears. Panic erupted among those gathered in the warehouse as they scrambled for cover or attempted to erase any trace of their illegal activities. Michael's heart raced as he realized how close they were to being caught. "Get out! Now!" Victor shouted as officers stormed through the entrance. In an instant, everything changed for Michael. The life he led was no longer sustainable, it hung by a thread ready to snap at any moment. With chaos unfolding around him, he faced an agonizing decision: flee with Victor into the darkness or return home to face Sarah and their children armed with nothing but uncertainty and fear. As adrenaline coursed through him, Michael weighed each option against a backdrop of love and loyalty, his family's safety versus an uncertain escape from consequences that loomed ever closer. Every second stretched into eternity as he stood frozen between two worlds, the one where lies threatened to destroy everything and another where truth held its own perilous risks. With sirens blaring outside and panic surging within him, Michael knew whatever choice he made from here would echo beyond this moment, shaping not just his destiny but also determining whether or not he could protect those he loved most from the storm closing in around them. As the days turned into weeks following the harrowing events at the warehouse, Michael found himself ensnared in a web of paranoia and guilt that tightened with each passing moment. The once familiar comfort of his family life began to feel foreign, overshadowed by the constant fear of exposure. Every creak of the floorboards, every unexpected knock at the door sent adrenaline coursing through his veins, igniting his anxieties. Was it law enforcement coming to uncover his secret? Would they pull him from their family gatherings, tearing apart the life he had built? He tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy for Sarah, Emma, and Jake, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. Each cheerful laugh from his children felt like a reminder of what was at stake, a fragile happiness teetering on the edge of collapse. During dinner one evening, as they shared stories about their day, Michael's thoughts drifted. He imagined what would happen if he simply confessed everything to Sarah. The idea lingered in his mind like a moth circling a flame. "Dad? Earth to Dad." Jake's voice jolted him back to reality. His son's concerned expression made Michael's heart ache. "You okay?" Michael forced a smile, nodding as he looked into Jake's innocent eyes. "Yeah, buddy. Just thinking. But internally he felt a storm brewing. What if that storm became too powerful to contain? Later that night, while Sarah tucked Emma in and Jake settled down with his favorite book, Michael found himself alone in the dim light of their living room. The space felt suffocating as shadows danced around him. He stared at the family photos lining the walls, snapshots of joy encapsulating moments he feared might soon be shattered. It was then that doubt crept into his mind like an unwelcome guest. "What are you doing?" he whispered to himself, pacing back and forth. "You're risking everything for what? Money? Power?" The questions gnawed at him relentlessly. Each time he considered confessing to Sarah, the woman who had stood by him through thick and thin, he felt a crippling wave of guilt wash over him. Would she still love him if she knew? How would she react? The next evening, while helping Sarah prepare dinner, he found himself standing beside her at the counter, vividly aware of how her laughter filled the air like music. She turned to him with a smile, her hair cascading around her shoulders and her eyes sparkling with warmth. "What's on your mind?" she asked casually. In that moment, Michael felt an overwhelming urge to reveal everything, the truth that had become a festering wound within him, but as he opened his mouth to speak, the words caught in his throat. Instead of confessing, he replied with a simple, "Just work stuff." The lie slipped from his lips so effortlessly it made him cringe inside. Sarah's expression shifted slightly. She studied him for a heartbeat longer before returning to their meal preparations with an understanding nod. But that brief moment of connection only deepened Michael's turmoil. He could see her unwavering trust and love reflected in her gaze. Each time he chose silence over honesty, he felt like he was betraying not just her but also the children who looked up to him as their protector. Days passed in a blur of tension-filled routines where paranoia loomed over every interaction. At work, Michael struggled to focus during meetings. Each phone call felt like it could be from someone seeking answers about his illicit dealings. Even mundane tasks seemed laden with consequences as he constantly checked over his shoulder, fearing that someone would discover his secret life. One rainy afternoon, while driving home from work lost in thought, Michael nearly veered off course when a police car zoomed past him with sirens blaring. His heart raced as panic surged through him. What if they were coming for him? What if they had connected the dots? He fought against rising dread and focused on calming himself, taking deep breaths as he reminded himself that nothing had happened yet. When he finally arrived home that evening, drenched from the rain and shaken by fear, he found Emma and Jake sprawled out on the living room floor molding clay into imaginative shapes. Their laughter echoed through the halls, a sound so pure it almost broke him in half. "Dad, look what we made!" Emma exclaimed excitedly as she held up a lopsided figurine. Michael forced a smile even as guilt clawed at his insides. How could he allow them to remain blissfully unaware while hiding such monumental truths? As they played together, he envisioned telling them everything, how freeing it would be to unburden himself from this weight. But each time he approached an honest moment, their laughter would pull him back from the cliff's edge. Later that night, while lying next to Sarah in bed, she reached out for his hand, a small gesture that sent shockwaves through him. Her trust and love wrapped around him like an embrace but simultaneously pushed against all those secrets pressing down on his chest. "Michael?" Sarah whispered softly into the darkness between them. "You're really quiet tonight. Is something bothering you?" In that moment, the urge to confess surged again. His heart raced as he turned toward her, ready to share all that haunted him. But instead of speaking up and risking everything they built together, he swallowed hard and replied with a shaky breath, "I'm just tired." As sleep claimed him eventually amidst swirling doubts and regretful thoughts, Michael realized that every day spent balancing two lives pulled him deeper into turmoil, a struggle amplified by every missed opportunity for honesty with those who mattered most. Yet fear held tight to its grip. Confession remained an elusive dream drowned beneath waves of anxiety threatening to engulf him whole. As the days turned into weeks, the invisible chasm between Michael and his family deepened, fueled by his unrelenting secret. The warmth that once enveloped their household began to feel strained, like an old sweater stretched beyond its limits. Sarah, ever perceptive, sensed that something was amiss. The subtle shifts in Michael's demeanor did not go unnoticed. She could feel the emotional distance growing, like a shadow creeping over their lives. Family dinners, once filled with laughter and shared stories, now felt fraught with tension. Michael would often zone out, lost in his thoughts, while Emma and Jake animatedly discussed their days. "Dad?" Jake would occasionally say, his voice tinged with confusion. "Are you even listening?" The innocent questioning cut through Michael's heart like a knife. He would nod absently, forcing a smile that felt more like a mask than a reflection of his true self. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Sarah tried to keep the conversation light. "So, how was school today?" "Any exciting news?" she asked, glancing at each child with warmth and encouragement. Emma excitedly recounted her art class project while Jake chimed in about a school play he wanted to audition for. But amidst the joyous chatter, Michael felt like an outsider looking in, his mind racing with worry over the consequences of his choices and what might happen if his secret came to light. "Dad?" Emma's voice broke through his thoughts again. "You're really quiet tonight." Michael forced himself to focus on her words but felt an overwhelming wave of guilt wash over him. "I'm just tired," he said softly, the lie slipping from his lips so easily it made him wince inside. He could see the disappointment flicker across Sarah's face, her brow furrowing slightly as she exchanged concerned glances with Emma. It pained him to know that he was causing this disconnection, yet he felt trapped in a cycle he couldn't escape. As weeks went by, Sarah became increasingly worried about Michael's emotional withdrawal. She noticed how he often stared off into space during family activities or how he seemed distracted even when they were together. One night after putting the children to bed, she confronted him gently as they sat on the couch. "Michael," she began tentatively, "I've been feeling like there's something on your mind lately. You're not yourself." Michael's heart raced as he braced himself for this moment, the moment when he could either come clean or retreat further into silence. But as he looked into Sarah's eyes filled with concern and love, doubt flooded back in. "I've just been busy at work," he replied carefully. "You know how it is." Her expression shifted slightly, she didn't seem convinced. "I know you're working hard, but it feels like you're carrying something heavy. If something's bothering you, I want you to talk to me." The sincerity in her voice made Michael ache even more. He wanted nothing more than to break down the walls separating them and share everything, the burden weighing him down like an anchor in stormy seas. Instead, he opted for silence once again, the safe choice that only widened the gap between them. In the following days, misunderstandings began to arise between him and Sarah. Small irritations turned into larger arguments. She would snap at him for leaving dirty dishes in the sink while Michael would respond with frustration over her probing questions about his well-being. Each interaction dripped with unspoken tension, a pressure cooker building up inside their home. Emma and Jake began to feel the shift too. They sensed their parents' mood changes and grew increasingly uneasy with the underlying discord that seemed to hang in the air like fog obscuring familiar paths. Family movie nights became less frequent as each member retreated into their own worlds, Michael lost in thoughts of survival and guilt while Sarah poured herself into work and the children immersed themselves in solitary activities. One afternoon, while cleaning up after lunch, Sarah stumbled upon Michael's phone lying face down on the kitchen counter. A notification flashed across the screen, a message from Victor. Curiosity sparked within her as she picked it up instinctively but hesitated before reading it fully. Something within her urged caution, perhaps she should respect his privacy? Yet another part felt compelled to uncover what had been hidden beneath layers of silence. That evening during dinner preparations, Sarah found herself distracted by thoughts of what lay behind Michael's guarded demeanor, the unanswered questions gnawing at her mind like persistent whispers demanding attention. As she chopped vegetables for their meal, doubt slowly transformed into determination. She needed to understand what was happening before it spiraled out of control. After tucking the children into bed that night, Sarah sat down at her computer and began searching for any information regarding Michael's business dealings over the past few months, anything that might shed light on why he had become a stranger within their own home. Meanwhile, Michael lay awake beside her, wrestling with regret and fear, wondering what would happen if Sarah discovered even a fraction of the truth lurking beneath surface-level smiles and polite exchanges. Tension thickened like fog enveloping them both, each moment heavy with uncertainty as paths converged toward an inevitable confrontation where secrets could no longer remain buried without consequences ripping through their family fabric apart at its seams. One chilly evening, as Michael returned home from work, he was startled to find an unexpected figure waiting on his doorstep. A familiar face that sent shivers down his spine, a figure from his past he had long hoped to forget. It was Alex, an old business partner whose presence was both a reminder of the choices Michael had made and a harbinger of the trouble that seemed to follow him like a shadow. "Michael," Alex said, a smirk playing on his lips as he stepped forward with an air of casual confidence. "It's been a while." Michael felt his heart race as he tried to mask the flood of emotions surging within him. "What are you doing here?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady despite the apprehension tightening around his throat. "Oh, just passing through town and thought I'd drop by," Alex replied nonchalantly, though Michael could sense the undercurrents of something more sinister beneath his seemingly harmless demeanor. Memories of their past dealings rushed back, deals that had often skirted the line of legality and ethics, each one pulling him deeper into a world he was now trying desperately to escape. "Look, I'm busy," Michael said, attempting to close the door, but Alex quickly wedged his foot in the opening. "Come on, don't be like that," he pressed. "I just want to catch up. There's something important we need to discuss." Against his better judgment, Michael relented and opened the door wider. "Fine. Just for a minute." He stepped back, allowing Alex entry as he struggled with a mix of nostalgia and dread. Once inside, Alex surveyed the living room with feigned interest. "Nice place you've got here. Looks like you've done well for yourself since we last worked together." His tone dripped with condescension, a reminder that Michael's success had roots in dealings they both knew were questionable. "Thanks," Michael replied tersely as he fought to maintain composure. "What do you want?" Alex leaned against the wall casually, crossing his arms. "I need your help with something. A little business opportunity that could use your expertise." Michael's stomach churned at the suggestion. The last thing he wanted was to become entangled in another dubious venture. Doing so could unravel everything he had built for his family. "I'm not interested," he said firmly. "Oh really? You don't think I know what's been going on in your life?" Alex challenged, his eyes narrowing slightly. "You think you can just walk away from this? From me? The things we did, they don't just go away." A cold sweat broke out across Michael's brow as memories of their shared past threatened to resurface, objects they'd both turned a blind eye to while chasing success at any cost. He had fought hard to distance himself from that life and wanted nothing more than to protect Sarah and the kids from its repercussions. "Listen, I've moved on," Michael insisted, desperation creeping into his voice. "I have a family now." Alex chuckled darkly. "Ah yes, your perfect little family. But let's be real here, secrets have a way of coming to light. You wouldn't want them to find out about your past dealings or mine." The implication hung heavy in the air like smoke. Michael felt the blood drain from his face as Alex took a step closer, invading his personal space with an unsettling intensity. "You see, I've been keeping tabs on you, on us," he continued ominously. "And if you don't play nice with me now, those secrets might just slip into someone else's hands, including your lovely wife's." Michael's heart dropped at the thought of Sarah discovering anything about him, about who he really was beneath the facade of the perfect husband and father. He struggled to keep his composure as anger and fear coursed through him like wildfire. "You wouldn't dare threaten my family," Michael spat back defiantly. "Oh, but I would," Alex replied with chilling calmness. "You should consider this an offer, a chance for us to team up again like old times. After all, we were good together." For a moment, memories of their collaboration flickered through Michael's mind, the adrenaline rush of closing deals and living on the edge, but now they felt tainted by guilt and regret. He was no longer that young man chasing ambition without thought. He understood all too well what it meant to risk everything for fleeting gains. "I'm done with that life," Michael said firmly, summoning every ounce of resolve within him. "You need to leave." With a sly grin, Alex stepped back slowly, but not before leaving behind an unsettling warning. "Just remember, Michael, you can run from your past, but it always catches up in the end." As Alex turned and walked out the door, Michael felt like the walls were closing in around him. The encounter left him shaken, a stark reminder that no matter how hard he tried to move forward, remnants of his past lingered like ghosts waiting for the right moment to haunt him. Inside, his mind raced with thoughts of Sarah and their children, how close they were to losing everything if he couldn't sever ties with those who could expose him. As dread settled heavily in his chest, Michael realized something fundamental. Protecting his family meant confronting not only external threats but also facing the choices he had made that led him down this perilous path in the first place. The tension in Michael's home had reached a boiling point, creating an atmosphere thick with anxiety. Each day felt like a race against time, an unspoken fear looming over every interaction. He could hardly breathe without considering the consequences of his secret, and the weight of it all pressed heavily on his chest. It was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down. One fateful Saturday afternoon, while Michael was preparing for a family outing, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. He exchanged glances with Sarah, who had been quietly folding laundry in the living room. "I'll get it," he said, trying to sound composed despite the unease gnawing at him. As he opened the door, he was met by two uniformed police officers standing on his porch, their expressions serious. Michael's heart dropped as they introduced themselves. "Mr. Thompson, we'd like to ask you a few questions regarding some recent developments." His mind raced. Could this be about Alex? Had he finally tipped them off? Panic rose within him as he tried to maintain a calm exterior. "Is there a problem?" he asked, his voice strained. "We need to discuss your business dealings," one officer replied, stepping forward slightly. "Can we come in?" Just then Sarah appeared behind Michael, her brow furrowed in concern. "What's going on?" she asked nervously. "It's nothing," Michael lied quickly, but the look in Sarah's eyes told him she sensed the gravity of the situation. "Sir," the second officer interjected gently, "this is serious. We need to talk to you about your involvement in several questionable activities linked to your business." Michael felt trapped as fear coursed through him. He glanced back at Sarah, whose expression shifted from concern to confusion and then to alarm as she began to piece together the implications of what was happening. "Michael," she asked, her voice shaking slightly. "What are they talking about?" Before he could respond, Emma and Jake came bounding into the room, their innocent smiles quickly fading as they realized something was wrong. The tension was palpable. They stood frozen as they took in the scene unfolding before them. "Mommy? What's happening?" Jake asked, looking up at Sarah with wide eyes. "Everything is fine," Michael insisted, forcing a smile that felt foreign on his face as he turned back to the officers. He felt like a dam ready to burst. Everything inside him screamed for honesty, yet he remained paralyzed by fear. "Sir, we're not here to cause any trouble," one officer said diplomatically. "We simply want to understand your connection to some ongoing investigations." At that moment, everything shattered. The facade he had built around his family crumbled into dust. The weight of his lies bore down on him like a crushing wave as reality set in. He knew this was it. There would be no more hiding. "Sarah," he started slowly, his voice trembling with trepidation as he turned toward her. "There's something I need to tell you, something important." But before he could gather his thoughts or find the right words, Emma spoke up quietly from where she stood next to Jake. "Dad, are you in trouble?" The innocence in her voice sliced through him like glass. It was a painful reminder of how deeply intertwined his actions were with their lives that now hung precariously in balance. "Dad?" Jake echoed anxiously. With their eyes fixed upon him, questions unspoken yet clear, Michael felt overwhelmed by an urge to protect them from the truth that had become his prison. But deep down, he knew that honesty was the only way forward. They deserved more than this tangled web of deceit. "Listen," he began again, taking a deep breath and stepping closer to Sarah and their children. "I've made some mistakes, serious ones." As he spoke those words aloud for the first time, a floodgate opened within him, a rush of emotions that poured forth uncontrollably as he recounted everything, the shady business deals, the choices that led him astray, and how fear had kept him silent for far too long. The room fell silent. Disbelief washed over Sarah's face as she processed each revelation. "You've been lying to us?" she whispered incredulously. "I didn't want to hurt you," Michael pleaded desperately, tears welling in his eyes as shame flooded over him like an unrelenting tide. "I thought I could fix it all without dragging you into it." But Sarah's expression shifted from shock to anger, a tempest of emotions swirling within her as she struggled to reconcile the man she loved with the stranger who had hidden so much from her. "How could you keep this from us?" "From me," she demanded fiercely. "I was scared." Michael replied passionately, feeling desperation clawing at him as he reached out toward her. "I didn't know how to tell you. I thought I could make everything better before you ever found out." In that moment of raw honesty, Emma and Jake looked on with wide eyes, confusion etched across their youthful faces as they struggled to grasp what was unfolding before them. Sarah turned away for a moment as tears slipped silently down her cheeks. Every word Michael spoke felt like nails hammering into her heart as betrayal settled heavily upon her shoulders. The life they had built together teetered on the edge of collapse, a fragile construct exposed for all its flaws and imperfections. Before long, one of the officers cleared his throat gently. "Mr. Thompson," he said carefully but firmly, "we're going to need your cooperation moving forward." Michael looked back at Sarah and their children, fearful glances exchanged among them, and realized that chaos now ruled their lives. Everything had changed irrevocably in an instant. Standing amid emotional fallout and devastation surrounding them like storm clouds gathering overhead, Michael understood that there would be no turning back now. The truth had finally emerged from its hiding place and taken root within their family dynamic in ways that none of them could ever have anticipated. In the wake of Michael's revelation, an unsettling silence enveloped the Thompson household. The air was thick with unspoken emotions as the reality of their new situation began to sink in. Each family member processed the shocking truth differently, grappling with feelings of betrayal, fear, and confusion. Sarah stood in the living room, her arms crossed tightly against her chest as if trying to shield herself from the emotional turmoil that threatened to engulf her. The anger that had surged during Michael's confession was now giving way to profound sadness. Her mind raced with memories of their life together, the laughter, the shared moments of joy, now tainted by the knowledge that everything had been built on a foundation of lies. "Why didn't you just tell me?" she finally managed to ask, her voice trembling. "We could have faced this together." "I thought I could protect you," he replied, desperation lacing his words. "I thought I could fix it before it ever came to this." "Protect us?" Sarah echoed incredulously. "You've put us all in danger. You lied to me for years." Michael felt the weight of her words as they sank into his chest like lead. He had wanted to shield his family from the truth, but in doing so he had jeopardized everything they held dear. The realization that his decisions had far-reaching consequences intensified his internal struggle. "I'm so sorry," he said, tears welling in his eyes. "I never meant for any of this to happen." Meanwhile, Emma and Jake remained rooted in place, their innocent faces reflecting a mixture of confusion and fear. They were too young to fully grasp the complexities of adult life but could sense that something monumental and painful was unfolding around them. "Dad, are we going to be okay?" Jake finally asked, his small voice breaking through the tension like a fragile thread. Michael knelt down to meet Jake's gaze, feeling an ache deep within him. "I hope so, buddy," he said softly. "But things are going to change for a while." "Change how?" Emma asked, her eyes wide with concern as she looked between her parents. Michael hesitated, knowing that his children deserved honesty but not wanting to burden them with details they couldn't understand. "We might have some tough times ahead," he admitted carefully. "But we'll face them together as a family." Sarah watched him kneeling before their children and felt a surge of conflicting emotions, love for him as a husband and father battling against the hurt that still lingered. She wanted to believe Michael's reassurances, she wanted to trust him again despite everything that had happened. However, as days turned into weeks following the confrontation with law enforcement and Alex's looming threat, uncertainty loomed over them like a dark cloud. Michael faced mounting pressure from authorities looking into his business dealings while grappling with how best to protect his family from fallout. Sarah found herself oscillating between anger and understanding, the desire to support Michael clashing with the reality that he had put them all at risk. As she tried to navigate her feelings, she started reaching out for help, talking to friends about what was happening and seeking advice from those who had experienced similar struggles. One evening after putting the children to bed, Sarah confronted Michael again about their future. "What are we going to do now?" she asked quietly, her voice strained but resolute. "I don't know," he admitted honestly. "But I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." His words hung heavy in the air. Both felt the enormity of what lay ahead as they pondered their choices together. Do they fight through this as a united front or let fear tear them apart? Days later, Michael found himself sitting across from a lawyer who specialized in business law and criminal defense, a decision he had reluctantly made after realizing how precarious their situation truly was. The lawyer explained potential outcomes based on the ongoing investigations and urged Michael to cooperate fully with authorities. "They're looking at serious charges," the lawyer said matter-of-factly. "It's important that you come clean about everything if you want any chance at leniency." Sitting there in that sterile office surrounded by legal jargon felt surreal. Michael couldn't shake off the sense of impending doom pressing down on him like a vice grip. The thought of facing legal consequences sent waves of anxiety crashing against him. What would happen if he were incarcerated? How would Sarah manage without him? And most importantly, what would become of their children? As he returned home later that day, his mind racing with possibilities, Michael noticed Sarah sitting quietly at the dining table lost in thought. The atmosphere between them felt charged yet uncertain. They were two people standing on opposite sides of a chasm forged from betrayal and fear. "I talked with someone today," he said cautiously as he approached her. "About what?" she asked without looking up. "About my business, about what's happening." She finally met his gaze, eyes searching for answers amidst uncertainty. "What did they say?" "They want me to cooperate fully," he replied slowly. "It might mean admitting everything I've done, even if it means facing consequences." Fear flickered across Sarah's face as she processed his words. The idea of Michael being held accountable for actions that had endangered their family weighed heavily upon her heart. Yet amid those fears lay an undeniable flicker of hope. Perhaps confronting these challenges head-on could ultimately lead toward healing. "Whatever happens," Sarah said finally, steeling herself for what lay ahead, "we'll figure it out together." In that moment, a small glimmer of unity began to emerge through chaos, the realization that despite all odds stacked against them, love remained woven into every choice they made moving forward. The road ahead would be fraught with difficulties, yet facing those challenges together offered a sense of strength neither had anticipated finding amidst such turmoil, a promise that even in darkness, there existed a path toward redemption waiting just beyond reach if only they dared continue forward hand in hand. As the weeks turned into months following the tumultuous revelations, Michael found himself on a journey that was both challenging and transformative. The initial chaos had begun to settle, replaced by a steady rhythm of accountability and introspection. He had learned that redemption was not simply about escaping consequences but rather about confronting his past and striving to rebuild the trust he had shattered. The decision to cooperate fully with law enforcement had been a daunting one. Michael faced the repercussions of his actions head-on, enduring long hours of questioning and navigating legal proceedings that felt like a relentless storm battering against him. Yet, through this process he discovered an unexpected sense of clarity. Acknowledging his mistakes allowed him to take ownership of his life in ways he had never imagined. Each time he entered the courtroom or met with his attorney, Michael reminded himself of what was at stake: his family, their future, and the chance to make amends for the life he had nearly lost. The weight of guilt still lingered heavily, but he resolved to use it as fuel for change rather than let it drag him down. One evening, after a particularly difficult day in court, Michael sat at the kitchen table across from Sarah. The tension between them had softened over time, but remnants of their past struggles still hung in the air. As they shared a simple meal prepared together, a small symbol of their growing collaboration, Michael took a deep breath and spoke from his heart. "Sarah," he began, searching her eyes for understanding. "I know I've hurt you deeply. I can't change what I did, but I want to do everything I can to earn your trust back." She looked up from her plate, her expression thoughtful yet guarded. "It's going to take time," she replied slowly. "You can't just say sorry and expect everything to be fine overnight." "I understand," he said earnestly. "I'm committed to making things right, not just with you but with our kids too. I want them to see that I'm trying, that I'm willing to fight for us." In the weeks that followed, Michael took tangible steps toward rebuilding their family unit. He enrolled in counseling sessions focused on accountability and personal growth, seeking guidance from professionals who could help him navigate the complexities of his emotions and decisions. He wanted not only to heal himself but also to become a better husband and father. Sarah supported him through this journey while also engaging in her own healing process. She began attending workshops on communication and trust building, determined to create an environment where they could openly discuss their feelings without fear of judgment or retribution. Together, they worked on fostering an atmosphere of transparency within their home. One Saturday afternoon, Sarah suggested they start a new family tradition, a weekly family meeting where everyone could express their thoughts and feelings openly. It was a small step toward healing, but one that would lay the groundwork for deeper connections moving forward. During their first meeting, Emma and Jake nervously exchanged glances as they sat around the table with their parents. "What if we don't like what we hear?" Jake asked hesitantly. Michael smiled gently at his son, his heart swelled with pride knowing that they were taking this step together as a family. "That's okay," he assured them. "We're here to listen and support each other no matter what." As they shared their feelings, their fears about what had happened and hopes for the future, Michael felt a profound sense of belonging enveloping them all. The conversations were raw at times, filled with tears and laughter as they navigated through misunderstandings together. Over time, those meetings became a safe haven where vulnerability was welcomed rather than feared, a space where healing could flourish amidst uncertainty. With each passing week, they began to rebuild bonds frayed by secrets. Trust gradually replaced doubt. As summer approached, Michael found himself reflecting on how far they had come as a family since that fateful day when everything unraveled. While he still faced legal challenges that loomed overhead like dark clouds threatening rain, he realized that true redemption wasn't defined solely by external circumstances, it arose from within. One evening while watching the sunset from their backyard, the vibrant colors painting the sky above, Michael turned to Sarah and said softly, "I know I have a long way to go, but I'm grateful for your strength, for standing by me during this." Sarah smiled warmly back at him, a flicker of hope igniting in her eyes as she reached out to squeeze his hand tightly. "We're in this together," she replied simply. Days turned into weeks, and as summer blossomed into full bloom, Michael embraced every opportunity for growth, both personally and as part of a family unit redefining itself amid challenges faced head-on rather than hidden away in shadows. Through shared laughter at family outings, heartfelt discussions during those weekly meetings, and moments spent simply enjoying each other's company again, the Thompsons forged ahead toward brighter horizons filled with possibility. Michael understood now that real transformation required ongoing effort. It demanded patience with oneself and others along with unwavering commitment toward fostering connections built on honesty instead of fear. As he held on to hope, both for himself and for his family, he knew one thing above all else: redemption was not merely an endpoint but rather an ongoing journey filled with lessons learned along the way, a path leading toward healing and ultimately, a renewed sense of love binding them all together stronger than before. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting warm hues across the sky, Michael sat on the porch with Sarah, reflecting on the journey they had taken together. The gentle breeze rustled the leaves of nearby trees and the world around them felt peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos that had once threatened to tear their family apart. After weeks of open communication and shared vulnerability, they had begun to heal, but the scars of the past remained fresh in their minds. "Do you think we'll ever really get past this?" Sarah asked quietly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Will we ever stop feeling the weight of what happened?" Michael took a deep breath, contemplating her question. "I think we can move forward, but I don't believe we'll ever forget," he replied thoughtfully. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing. It reminds us of how vulnerable we are, how fragile trust can be." In the wake of his secrets being exposed, Michael had come to realize that secrets are like shadows, easily hidden during daylight but always lurking nearby, waiting for an opportunity to emerge into the light. The consequences of keeping things buried often extend far beyond personal guilt. They create barriers between loved ones, eroding trust and intimacy. "Every secret we keep comes at a cost," he continued. "I thought I was protecting you and the kids by hiding my past, but in reality I put all of us at risk. I made choices that affected our entire family." Sarah nodded slowly, her expression contemplative. "It's easy to think that withholding certain truths is for the best," she said softly. "But it often leads to a deeper betrayal when those truths finally surface." Michael reflected on this notion, the complexity of human behavior and how it intertwines with love and honesty. He understood now that while love might drive people to protect one another from harsh realities, it's ultimately honesty that fosters genuine connections. Secrets create distance, they build walls instead of bridges. "What do you think it will take for us to fully trust each other again?" Sarah asked, breaking through his thoughts. "I believe it starts with being open about everything, even the uncomfortable stuff," he replied earnestly. "It's about recognizing that vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness. If we can share our fears and uncertainties without judgment, maybe we can rebuild what was lost." As they sat in silence for a moment, Michael couldn't help but ponder how many relationships are strained or broken under the weight of unspoken truths. Each person carries their own burdens, experiences they may feel ashamed of or afraid to share, and these hidden parts can fester over time until they threaten to unravel everything. "Do you think it's possible for everyone to embrace honesty?" Sarah asked after a pause. Michael considered her question carefully. "I hope so," he said finally. "But I realize it's not easy. People fear rejection or judgment, they worry about how their truths will affect those they love. It takes courage to be honest, not just with others but with ourselves." The conversation drifted toward reflections on their individual journeys, moments when they had struggled to be open about their own insecurities or past mistakes. They shared stories of friends and family members who had faced similar challenges, times when secrets had driven wedges between them and ultimately led to painful realizations. "Maybe it's part of being human," Sarah mused aloud. "We all have our flaws and complexities, our stories shaped by experiences that aren't always pretty." Michael smiled softly at her insight. There was wisdom in recognizing that everyone has their battles, some fought quietly within themselves while others seep into relationships like cracks in a foundation. As twilight descended upon them, enveloping the world in soft shadows, Michael felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude wash over him. They were not just survivors of hardship, they were champions of growth who had chosen to confront their truths together, a testament to resilience forged through love. "I think rebuilding trust is an ongoing process," he said as he squeezed Sarah's hand gently. "But every step we take toward honesty brings us closer together. It allows us to embrace each other fully, flaws and all." In that moment, questions lingered in Michael's mind, questions that would resonate far beyond his own experience. How do we navigate our vulnerabilities without losing sight of those we love? In what ways can honesty serve as a lifeline rather than an anchor? And ultimately, how do we learn to embrace each other's stories, their complexities and imperfections as integral parts of our shared human experience? As darkness enveloped them under a blanket of stars twinkling above, the vastness reminding them of life's unpredictability, Michael knew that while challenges lay ahead, they would face them together armed with newfound wisdom. That secrets are heavy burdens best shared rather than borne alone. And perhaps through embracing honesty and vulnerability moving forward, they could not only mend what had been broken but also cultivate deeper connections built on trust. A legacy for their children as they navigated their own paths in life filled with complexities yet illuminated by love.